Blog Talk Radio.
Peace. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and foes. Welcome to another edition of Yashua Reveals. I am your host, and today we want to discuss how bigotry destroys all religion. I bring you greetings of peace from our celestial parent, the divine, illustrious creator, all-encompassing, self-sufficient, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. And we thank God for radiating his law, his life, and his love throughout the known universe, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, from out of the disk of the sun. That celestial power that's hidden within the disk, that's the source. That inside of that disk, when you look at the sun long enough, you'll begin to see a black dot on your eye. That right there is what they call in the ancient teachings of the Nile Valley. They called that Amen. Amen was never a statue. Nah, Amen only means secret, or the secret place, the secret from, out of the realm everything is created. And from there, you have Akhenaten reigning with all power, because he became one with the universal creator, because he is the universal creator. When he came down to earth and was and took on flesh, then he's God. There is no many gods. It's only one. And when he comes, he manifests, and then he shows you what it is. And the world right now is still functioning using his technology, using his teachings, using his commandments, using his laws, using his love, and has transformed his teachings into other allegorical characters that really never existed in history, all to disguise him so that people all over the world, different ethnic groups, different cultural understandings and religious and political ideologies can grasp him on all levels. So then one day, then they are called to be as one people, all under the light rays of the sun. And these people is all gathered together on earth, which is our divine celestial mother, Queen Nefertiti. So as you see, with the universal creator, right, radiating light, that light being Akhenaten, and that light showing forth on earth, which is Nefertiti, and we are born on the earth and of the earth and from the earth. And as we submit our will to do their will, we become one with them. Isn't that awesome? And all they want us to do is become one with them. And then they begin to share their power with us. You ain't got to wait till you die in order to experience divine power, divine guidance, divine wisdom that you would not have known had not you got in contact with the divine. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. For a man that never been to Egypt yet, but there are Egyptian scholars, there are historians, there are scholars and others, because of what Akhenaten revealed to me. I'm quoted in their sources as a source, peer-reviewed. Like, how did he know this? How did he know this? I know it because I came in contact with my daddy, the master, the Adonai, the human master. I came in contact with Allah, arm, leg, arm, head. I came in contact with Jehovah or Yahweh. I came in contact with Yah or Ayah. And he revealed. And he guided his Elohim or his spirit to protect me, keep me out of trouble, as long as I obeyed his voice. I'm a witness to that. And I forever have to give them grace. I have to forever, I'm forever indebted to their grace and mercy. And I always will bow my knee. And always confess. And this is what I teach you to do. And so in their beautiful and righteous names, I bring you greetings from them in the languages of Scripture. In the Amharic language by saying Salam, in the Arabic language by saying Salam, and in the Hebrew language by saying Shalom. Simply means peace. And I want peace to be bestowed upon you and your family, beloved. Now let's get into today's subject. Bigotry. I want you to, the couple words in today's lecture that I need you to have a very particular understanding about. The first word is bigotry, and it is used as a noun. It means to those that have, it's a person, a noun is, of course, is a person, place, or thing. But it has an unreasonable attachment to a belief, opinion, or faction. In particular, prejudice against a person or a people on the basis of their membership of a particular group. Some synonyms for bigotry would be, of course, prejudice, bias, partiality, sectarianism, discrimination, unfairness, injustice, intolerance, narrow-mindedness, fanaticism, dogmatism, racialism, sexism, in some cases, chauvinism, anti-Semitism, so on and so forth. And the other word that I need you to understand, well, two other words. One would be to destroy. So you know what I mean when I say this. Destroy is a verb. It means to put an end to the existence of something by damaging or attacking it. Synonym for destroy is to smash, level, waste, ravage, devastate, annihilate, uproot. So if the subject is bigotry, destroys all religion, what I'm saying to you is that this particular thing, it lays waste, it would smash, it would ravage, it would devastate, it would annihilate, it would uproot the original purpose, the original intent, the original teaching of a religion. Now, let's look up religion. And what I mean by this, religion is the belief in and worship of a supernatural, let me read that again. I don't know why supernatural, that came to my mind. But anyway, the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal God or gods. Ideas about the relationship between science and religion. Now, as I did with the others, that's interesting because they don't got no synonyms for religion. It's either you accept that or you don't, huh? Okay. That's interesting. They don't have any synonyms. Now, from the it's some look at it as a Middle English word, and it's a obligation, bond, reverence, and from the Latin word it means to bind, and that's fine, Now, let's now get into today's subject. Growing up as the youngest until 1995, and as far as I know, there's no one that started younger than me. From 1983, I was 10 years old. And from that time, based on my religious instruction, how I was raised, and you have to understand, so since I was born in 1973, this is 2 years before the the fall or the destruction of the Nation of Islam. My mother was a young girl in that religious organization. My grandparents was in it. I had uncles and aunts that was all in it. They held different positions and so on and so forth. And I remember my grandfather used to tell me that when Malcolm X would come into town, it would be he and a crew of other men. I guess because maybe there was more lighter skin, I think. I'm not sure. They would, pick Malcolm X up from the airport and they would be his security while he's here in town. And so they had, my family had favor, in that religion and in that organization. So when my father, Lij David, when he came over with my uncle from Ethiopia, and my uncle, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, to do these back and forth trips and so on and so forth, and they could, the children that worked on his political staff, they could, travel while they were here and go to different places. And so my father wound up coming here to Chicago and met my mother, and it was at a convention. And as far as I know, this is how they got together. And he wanted to marry her, and for all intents and purposes, they were married. And they connected together and had me. And at that time, if you know the history of what happened in Ethiopia, when you get around to the 1970s, we're going to make this quick. When we get around to the 1970s, then you had, it was a military faction while His Imperial Majesty was traveling to different countries and so on and so forth, making connections with England and the World Court and the League of Nations and, and different things like that, in order to put Ethiopia in a not only in a good light, but to make sure that there is, resources and modernizations that will come to Ethiopia. And a lot of these reforms, most people don't want to get into this, but a lot of these reforms that Haile Selassie he was into and that he was implementing really came from my grandfather. My grandfather was Lij Yashua and the fifth, and he sat on the throne temporarily. And so how I believe in the family is that there was a coup that was established to overthrow Yashua so that his cousin can sit on the throne. Who is his cousin? His cousin is Haile Selassie. And it's a nice long debate on how he got power. But my grandfather actually received the throne legitimately. But there were some people that did not like a lot of things that he was doing. They thought that he was trying to make the whole country Muslims and so on and so forth, because he immediately began to do something that no other Ethiopian emperor had done. He had began to make connections to Egypt. He began to make connections with Arabia and Jordan and other Muslim countries. And he also had begun petitions towards the UN, for help for modernizations and so on and so forth or whatever. So that's why I tell you that a lot of the things that Haile Selassie was doing, all that was a foundation that was laid by my grandfather. So what happened is that when you get into this, the 70s, around 72, 73, there was a young military faction that was developing called the Derg, D-E-R-G. And with the Derg, what they did was overthrew the Ethiopian crown. So therefore, this is why today Ethiopia is ruled by a federated republic, because those students, those young students of the Derg, they were really Marxists and had socialist ideas. And so they did not like the religious political mix that Ethiopia had, but really that took us way back into ancient times. Matter of fact, Ethiopia, until my uncle, he was the only living human being, the only representative of a country that goes back into ancient times, clear history with a clear, not only history, But what's the word I'm looking for here? A family tree that goes all the way back. And this was a world phenomenon at that time. It's like wow, this is incredible. And when you go and you could see some of these pictures online, I'm gonna tell you, Queen Elizabeth and her husband and the aristocrats that was in Europe and in Arabia, knowing about Ethiopia, that was their only African country and its king and queen that they bowed to. They ain't bowed to nobody else. Nobody else of any dark pigment that they bowed to. They didn't bow to nobody else, but they bowed to my uncle, and that was for a very particular reason. I've once read in. I don't want to divert too far off of the subject, but I once read, and it said that, and I read this from a white historian, and he says that Ethiopia is the mother country of modern civilization. Think on that. Now, tie that in to many different other speeches that I have made and why I emphasize Ethiopia, Egypt, and the Nile Valley civilization, because really when you're talking Egypt, all you're thinking about is Ethiopians that left their native lands and went and colonized a whole nother area. And so they named that area for all intents and purposes. Some will call it Kemet, some will call it the land of Tamari, others will call it Egypt, some will call it the land of Mizraim. Others, it was the extended land of Cush. Some would call that all that area, Abyssinia. Well, but the whole continent at one time was called Ethiopia, and I believe that that's the name it should be called. It should be the whole continent of Africa. That should be a world petition to put it back the way that it was. And then the ocean that was on the side wasn't the Atlantic Ocean. It was called the Ethiopian Ocean. Now, put that back. Now, everything that was taken down, we need to put it back. Why? Because that keeps everything in its historical perspective. Now, let me move on because I don't want to divert too far off, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends and folks. So in 1973, when at the time I was being born, the United States, and as he left the United States, he went back to Ethiopia. My father had to go back with him, and at that time he had engaged to my mother. For all intents and purposes, this was a married couple, and the idea was to establish an Ethiopian community throughout the United States, but one in particular in Chicago, and that's where my father originally was planned to become a citizen and then run for office or whatever, and then he would be like an alderman and then eventually a mayor, and the mayor of Chicago, and so on and so forth, and so that we could have an Ethiopian base here in the United States. But the Derg had took over Ethiopia, and mind you, back then there was no cellular communication, meaning there was no cell phone. So my uncle did not know, my daddy did not know they was running into a trap. And so as the airplanes was landing back in Ethiopia, they didn't know that the country was under military occupation. So as my uncle was flying back, a lot of things, it was well planned. And I believe that that it was European infiltrators that didn't want Ethiopia to be more modernized. They didn't want Ethiopia to be because with my uncle establishing the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, what he wanted to do was that he wanted to make a United States of Africa, and Ethiopia would be like how Washington D.C. is to the United States. It would rule over everything in a federated way, so that other African countries could get the same reforms. And it wouldn't be so religiously indoctrinated, because that there's so many African countries that was involved in the Arab African slave trade, and so therefore they have a very strong religious attitude for Islam, and you got African tribal religions, you got, forms of Christianity, and also and Hebrewisms, throughout the African continent that pre-existed before the founding of Judaism. And you got a lot of these factions around. And so what my uncle wanted to do was even and using the priest so that we would be able to teach, a religious branding so that so that we know that we are all one. Why? Because with the same scripture, you got Hebrews, you got Hebrews and Jews and Christians and Coptics and Muslims. We're one. We're using the same as he would call it in his day, Abrahamic scriptures. Meaning they all believe in the father Abraham. And so this is how they all united in faith and so on and so forth. So that was the idea in terms of the religion, in terms of the politics, that if Ethiopia ruled because it was getting these reforms and these entrees from different European countries, irregardless that Italy was trying to invade Ethiopia, and it tried to do it 2 times, but was unsuccessful. So Ethiopia is the only country on the African continent that wasn't, quote unquote, colonized by Europeans. Even Alexander, he came close, but he saw all the highlands and the mountains of Ethiopia. He said, "Oh no, no way, I'm not doing this. Not in this hot sun. we ain't doing this." And so he bagged away. There was Napoleon. Even when they came down to Egypt, they had these ideas. Couldn't do it. He said, "Oh no, I'm not dealing with this terrain." So let's get into the bigotry part. What happened is that they go back and get ready to land the plane. And as they were getting ready to land the plane, the military was there. My uncle didn't know what was going on. And I'm only could just imagine in my mind, playing this out. So as he began to get off the plane and they drive him to, to the palace and so on and so forth, see, he's not knowing all what's going on. But the military faction they wanted him to really just give it up, just sign everything over to them, and he didn't want to do it that way. And so they just overtook it. And when they overtook it, they put my uncle on the run. And so he ran for a little bit before they caught him and killed him. They killed my father. So my mother never got to marry my father. So here I'm born, 1973. And if I may interject one small thing, my grandmother told me one day, she said, "Son, one day we was at your supermarket in Chicago." And she would say, in Chicago, you hear these stories that Mr. Muhammad, he liked to occasionally go around and make sure that the different stores and businesses are operating and functioning, correctly and making money and so on and so forth. So she says it was during the week, and her and my mother was doing some shopping at your supermarket on the south side of Chicago. And so Mr. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, he came in with, a few, security guards and so on and so forth, but within regular clothes, right? And he didn't have on his famous, crown that he had on, his head. Excuse me. So she said she was getting some groceries down the aisle. And it was at a time of day where the store wasn't really packed. And so coming down the aisle, right, and he's like looking at the store, they walking through and checking things out. And so my granny and my mother was right there, in the aisle. And so Mr. Muhammad smiled and walks over, and he stoops down. And so this is in the 1960s. And so he stooped down and said, "How are you, my sister?" Like that, right? And my mom pulled away. And so, Mr. Muhammad kind of, went back a little bit. And he said, "Oh, you should watch her. There'll be a strong one that'll be born from her." Like that, right? So he wished him well, and gave them, the Muslim greetings and so on and so forth, and that was it. So 2 years later after I was born, Mr. Muhammad passed away. And so even all that time, I can remember different things that was happening, and, there was meetings and all kinds of things. And because the Nation of Islam was going into chaos and so on and so forth. And there was people that had entered into, and this is what I went back and then looked at the reports later on. And, and then I looked at news articles, different things that was in different magazines and so on and so forth, because I wanted to understand what was happening before I began to be 10 years old. And so the more that I looked and the more I searched, I found out all kinds of things that was happening. People was going into mental institutions because they thought that the judgment of God was going to come down on white America for all the evils that they had done, in the name of Jesus, for over 400 years. Now, mind you, this was that teaching. And so when I went back and looked into the reports, I found out then that Jim Jones, the guy that took the people down to Guyana in South America, right near Brazil, and they got he gave them cyanide, inside of Kool-Aid, and they drunk it, or he forced them to drink it, and those that didn't drink it, they was ordered to be shot, and so on and so forth, and that happened. But Jim Jones, I found, he was interacting with Minister Farrakhan, with Imam W.D. Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. And as the story goes, that there were many members that came from certain mosques out of California that had joined the organization with Jim Jones. And many of those Muslims, they were killed. Something else happened. When Imam W.D. Muhammad, or some, as later on you will call him Imam Wardatudin Muhammad, right? Of the world the world community of Al-Islam in the West, and he also founded the American Muslim Mission. What happened is that he said that we can no longer engage in this white man is the devil and other religious bigotry. We can't do that anymore because it's wrong. There is no bigotry in Islam. There's no prejudice. And he quoted from Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He quoted from the last message that Muhammad gave. And Muhammad says that there is no superiority over the black over the white, or the white over the black, the Arab over the non-Arab. Duty to God. So that there was prejudice and bigotry even 1,400 years ago in the religion of Islam. Does that bigotry still continue today? Even though W.D. Muhammad, he wanted to outlaw the bigotry here in America among black Muslims. But was there any bigotry back then? Yes, it was. In the days of Moses, there was bigotry. See, whoever the revelation is revealed to first, for some reason, they feel as though they have a first place with God, and really, that's not fair. They really have no place with God like this. This is human reasoning. This is human reasoning. So when you go back to the days of Moses, you had to you go back into those Old Testament scriptures, and there's several. And Moses had to tell them that what they can do and what they cannot do to certain individuals and certain groups of people. Is there bigotry and prejudiceness in the Bible? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that's what destroys religion. In the Galatians chapter 2, you will find that, and even before in the New Testament, in the four Gospels, you will have even Jesus or Yashua. There was bigotry there. We have to stop the bigotry. We have to stop it. The Israelites, when you look at the bigotry with Moses, they didn't want to let certain people into the community of God. Or at least they said it was God, but really it's their community. They just use God as a shield to cover their dirty practices. The same thing that the early Hebrews did that followed Yashua. They did the same thing, and the same thing that the early Muslims did in the day of Muhammad. They're using God to shield their bigotry. Like, don't let certain peoples in. Or if you don't believe on us and our messenger and our prophets, if you want to live, either you're gonna pay taxes to us. This is in the Muslim teaching, in the Quran. And so the Jews and the Christians had to pay a certain tax, and that tax would mean from killing you, because they were commanded to kill the disbeliever and the infidel. And the only way a disbeliever and an infidel could get time in order to become Muslims, they have to be taught. So, but if they don't want to be taught, it's either they have to pay that tax or they can just be out, just slaughtered. Bigotry have no place in religion. Now you may say, oh no, not Jesus, not Yeshua. Hold on. Remember, he says, you don't cast your pearls before swine. You don't give the bread of the children to dogs. He related dogs to human beings and human beings to dogs. Is that of God? Hold on, no, we're going to deal with it. Be honest. Is that of God? No, it's not. No, it's not. See how then later Paul can say, there is no Jew, there is no Greek, there is no male, there is no female, there is no bond or free, all are one under Christ. Now, if all is one under Christ, then there is no bigotry. Then you can't say, you can't give the bread of the children unto dogs. You don't relate to human beings, and I don't give a damn what condition that they're in. We got to stop this bigotry. We got to stop this bigotry. The Israelites had the same problems. Looking at other people, as not only as polytheists, but as idolaters and so on and so forth, and because they didn't believe on their practices, so then you go into an area and then you kill people in the name of God. The Muslims did the same thing. Who are we as religious people to engage in this bigotry that not only will kill the true teachings, to destroy the true teachings, but it also kills off human beings? We have no right to do this. That's our own doing. Then we put that on God. And then so now you get all people all around the world, they don't want nothing to do with God. And this is your fault as Muslims, as Christians, as Jews, as Catholics, as Hebrews, as Israelites, as Jews. This is your problem. This is what your problem is. You got a bunch of bigotry in you. Who told you that you'd have to lord it over everybody? Who told you? Who gave you that right? God didn't give you that right. How do you know, Yashua? How do you know this? You ain't got a purer teaching than mine. And I teach the same thing that the ancients taught, that God makes his sun shine on the just and the wicked. He makes it rain on the just and the wicked. And listen, and from that nourishment, from the sun and the rain, right? And as it drops down on the earth, doesn't it give off its fruits and vegetations and grains and raisins and nuts and feed the animals and stuff like that? Then we can slaughter the animals and then we can eat the animals or whatever and have nourishment. We can pick the fruit from the tree and the vegetables from out of the gardens or whatever, and we can nourish our bodies. Well, then who the hell is we to say what God doesn't want? We don't have that right. That's our own religious bigotry, and we've been doing it for centuries, and it's wrong. You know what I'm saying is right. When you go into Galatians chapter 2, it tells you the bigotry that Peter had and that Paul detected. They said, so when Paul wasn't around the Jews, he'd be amongst the Gentiles, and they'd be breaking bread, eating together, and doing all these things together. But as soon as the Jews came around, he didn't want to associate with the Gentiles no more. It's bigotry. Actually, that's that's a kind of wishy-washy character. I had once somebody that it was a white guy. I don't know what his religion was. Most likely it's probably Christian. But I remember that we were cool. We was at work, and we used to break bread all the time. Now, mind you, I grew up as a black Muslim, so I was taught the white man is the devil. We're going to get to that in a moment. But I'm going to tell you something. Sitting there at that table with that white guy, and we used to talk every day, and I wasn't acting out of character. Hey, listen, you got to take me as I am. I don't have no time to be putting on all kinds of fronts and that kind of stuff. No. If you treat me decently, I'm going to treat you decently. And see, isn't that the teachings of my older brother? Now, mind you, he has some faults. Teaching of my older brother. He says, a good tree cannot produce evil fruit, and an evil tree cannot bring forth good fruit. You shall know them by their works. You will know a tree by the fruit it bears. Meaning, you will know the thinking. You will know the quality of that human being based on their actions. When other whites, I don't know if maybe they were talking to him on a different level. And I can remember for about a week we were sitting, and I had just began to work there, right, at this place. And so it was this particular day, for about a week, we were sitting in a certain area. If I came in first, he was sitting in that area. If he came in, if he beat me in there by a few minutes, we'd be sitting in the same thing, and we'd just talk about different things and, television shows, we'd discuss politics, what's going on in society and so on and so forth. And so when some other people had came in there, some other whites, they had just begun to work there. He didn't sit with me anymore. Matter of fact, he went beyond that. We just stopped talking, period. It's just, he began to avoid me and that kind of stuff like that. And guess what? It didn't pay me no mind. I went on by my day. It was cool. But I noticed something. When certain whites didn't come to work, then he'd say, hey, what's up, Yash? I just look back over at him, hey, what's up, man? I just keep going my way. See, because I picked up that character flaw. See, he's wishy-washy. See, I am what I am. I don't have no time to be putting on no front for anybody. But I had to learn that behavior, that it is what it is with you. Whatever you're going to be, just be that. We ain't got no time to be putting on these false fronts and so on and so forth. So let me tell you what happened. Growing up, there's not a teacher in elementary school, high school, when I went to regular public school, that would tell you I ever called a white teacher or anybody white. The white man was the devil. I was taught that theology. Then I understood that devil is a religious term. You see, that's not like a human being. No. And really, devil only means wicked person. You shall know a tree by the fruit it bears. So if it does wickedness, that means the thought, the speech, and the action are wicked. But what if the thought, the speech, and action are righteous? Now, mind you, when Malcolm X had saw Muslims that wasn't acting evil, praying, they was as pilgrims, and he saw them in Mecca, and so he was like, if we can get the white Americans to be introduced to Islam like the whites that's in the East, then a lot of the racial tensions, all this will cease. Now, mind you, as you've seen this in public, he's just discovering this. He did not know that. For all intents and purposes, he was taught the white man is the devil, and so he did not know Eurasian Arabs are white. But they are. He was taught that in the East, our brothers and that kind of stuff. No, he looked at them as more like mixed breeds. He did not know that these were white people. No, he didn't. He got introduced to that understanding when he went to Mecca 2 times. The first time, he had to quail certain to you like that. You got to know his speeches real good in order to know this. He had to keep certain things undercover, and he didn't make pilgrimage the first time when he went there. I think in around 58, 59, something like that. And he didn't take the pilgrimage at that time. He waited because Mr. Muhammad hadn't taken pilgrimage yet, so he waited. So he wanted to give his teacher the first crack at it first before him. You know what I mean? Basically the first person in the whole community to be, to go to Hajj. But really, he should have went on and took that Hajj, even though he gave that to his teacher, at that time. But he really should have went on ahead and did that, because the way that he would have expanded his philosophy and worldview that he had, it would have been better. When I was growing up, and my mom, my ma, as I call it, there's two ladies I call my ma. I call my real mother, my birth mother, my ma, and I call my grandmother my ma. Because, well, both women raised me, but my grandmother is the one that gave me more, my morals, values, and code of ethics and religious teaching and so on and so forth. And kept me in a quote unquote in a religious incubator, because she wanted me to be a leader in the Nation of Islam, if not to grow to be the successor to Louis Farrakhan. So she gave me, she made sure I had all kinds of entree and so on and so forth. So she made sure that I was in ministry class when I was 10, based on a vision that I had at the age of 10. And, or I would say about 9 at that time. And I saw myself teaching on the stage a vast amounts of people as far as the eye can see. And inside of the crowd, there was whites, there was blacks, there was Asians, there was Arabs, there was people all around the world. I mean, this audience was so magnanimous. It was so large. It just faded off into blackness. That's how many people it was. And I was on the stage teaching these people, and I had on this white suit, and and the stage behind me was this garden setting, and it was very beautiful. And so coming from actually a speech of Louis Farrakhan. So this is like 1983, and so coming back from Chicago, and then she would wait. Because she would wait because like about 30 minutes after the lecture, then the tape would go on sale. It'll be catered, and then you can buy it. And so then we played that tape again, and whatever message that was, it just took me into a state, where that. I saw myself, because really, as she told me to continue to listen to him, and when I see him, to do what he does, because that's the model to be like. She was like, so because you were made like this, you got hair texture like this. So what you should do is you should part your hair like that. Yeah. She said, the way that he speaks, you speak like that. And as you grow up and you could buy good clothes, then you will wear suits and ties like his. She wanted me to become just like him. She said, you follow his mannerisms and those things like that. This is what my grandmother told me to do, or my mom. So she told me to do. And I did that. And so when I got into that ministry class, and they began to teach me certain things, and I asked my student minister teacher different things, and he told me, he said, yes, you do everything you see him do. And so my student ministry teacher was a man from he used to be under Mr. Muhammad, a minister. His name was John Shabazz, and which later on was Minister Farrakhan renamed him Minister Abdul Allah Muhammad. He was over the ministry class, and so I remember Minister Abdul Allah, and I asked him about Malcolm X, and he says, you study him. He says, but whatever mistakes that he did, you have to be wise enough to never, ever repeat those mistakes. And if you don't repeat those mistakes, son, you will be successful. I mean, now mind you, I'm very young in my teens, didn't know what this man was talking about. So my mother, she saw the path that my grandmother or my mom was taking me down. And so look, when I became 10 years old and they had some kind of talk, and for all intents and purposes, I remember that my birth mother used to, pick me up occasionally, because I lived with my mom, my grandmother, right? And for all intents and purposes, I thought my grandmother was my mother. I didn't know any better. I didn't know my actual mother was my mother until I was 10 to 12 years old. I didn't know. I thought she was my older sister. And I thought all my siblings, which later on turned out to be my uncles and aunts, that they wasn't my brothers and sisters. And so I said, wait a minute. If you not my mom and this is not my pop, well then, who is my daddy? And she told me, she was like, about him, I'll tell you later. I can't tell you that right now. All I need you to do is know that in the religion, I'm your mama. And you do what I tell you to do. This is your pop. And you do what he tell you to do. You can listen to her, but make sure that what we are doing for you, we're doing it on the behalf of our people. So you have to do this. You have to do this to fulfill your vision. And so my real mom didn't want me to be involved in that because she said, no, because I don't want my son to be killed like they killed Malcolm X. This is what I heard her say to me. But once I got to be an adult, and I asked her, I said, well, but why didn't you want this? She said, I didn't want you to be killed. So she took me out of Muhammad University of Islam. The school opened up by Louis Farrakhan in the late 80s. And she moved me away. So then I would have no interaction for a year. And I'm going to tell you, I clowned for that whole year, beloved. And, oh, man, I had real behavior problems. I had behavior problems. I didn't want to do anything. Not that I didn't know the schoolwork, but it just wasn't for me. And I remember we moved to a place called Kenosha, Wisconsin. So I moved there, and we moved there, the family. And then that's when I found out that my brother and my sister only had one brother and one sister. So the family that I thought that was mine turned out to be not mine. It was very complex for me growing up. So going to this school, and it was called Trimper High, and it was the only high school in the area. So the area wasn't that big and expanded back then, So we went to that school, and I remember the first day of school coming down the hallway because, we moved there, and in the summer, so I made friends and so on and so forth, and so we all had to go to the same school. And so, mind you, we lived in the black area, of Kenosha, Wisconsin at that time, and I was being introduced to gangs and so on and so forth, and I can remember having gang literature because, listen, at that time I like to read everything, man, and so I had gang literature. And gangs wasn't originally bad. You know what I mean? These are young factions that came off of offshoots of Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party. So then it was little offshoots, if you will. You know what I mean? And these developed into gangs in major black areas of America, coming out of 1968, 1969, 1970s, and so on and so forth. So, of course, me, being a young youth, why not? Getting, involved in some gangs and inside of a particular gang, I was a minister of information. So mind you, I was very busy when I was young. And so here being a student minister in the Nation of Islam and being a minister of information in a particular gang, and so I came into that area. I was spreading the teachings of that gang and those that I thought that were conscious or on the pro-black wave. I would give them teachings of the Nation of Islam and so on and so forth. And teaching them in the religion and so on and so forth. I was just busy. But that's what that's what I was programmed to do. And so coming the first day of school, with my friends, we walking down the hallway, but I didn't know that the whites that was there, they was cool with certain blacks, and so it was this white guy named Ron. He walked up and he says, what's up, my nigga? Like that, right, to a friend of mine. His name was Dante. Now, mind you, me being pro-black, and then the Nation of Islam theology and Malcolm X, the white man's the devil, and all of that, right? Now, if this cuts off, I'll do part 2 tomorrow, just in case, because Blog Talk may cut me off. So, but I'll continue until it cuts me off. So he said, "What's up, my nigga?" So, well, mind you, at that time, man, I'm trying to tell you, man, I give it to you, right? if you're disrespecting the culture and so on and so forth. And I used to wear steel-toe boots, right? And so all year round, you know what I mean? Because, you know, if I had to put in some work, I'm going to put in some work, you know, if you understand what I'm saying to you. And so so I walked up to the white guy. I said, what you say, cracker? Like that, right? So my friends grabbing me. They said, no. He cool. Ron cool. You know, and I said, no, he don't mean it in that way. No, he don't mean it that way. You know, no, he cool with us. And so for that whole year, I'm trying to show you how that bigotry was in me, how it was planted in me because it was in the Nation of Islam's teachings. It was in the Bible. So as I studied the Bible back and forward, from cover to cover, flipped it over and I read it again. Flipped it over and I read it again. But as I was reading, it was putting that bigotry in me. I was reading the bigotry and I was hearing the bigotry when I would hear different ministers, different famous ministers in the Nation of Islam, different black power lecturers and so on and so forth. See, that bigotry. And so I told Ron, the white guy, I said, you know, I made a deal with him. You know, because like after that day, it happened the first day of school, right? Finally meeting him in the cafeteria. And I walked up to him. Now, mind you, this is like the tax that Muhammad was doing to the Jews and to the Christians that you'll find right there in the Quran. I'm trying to tell you, I've read those books and I developed that bigotry. This is how I know how to get rid of it. So I came to Ron and I met him in the lunchroom. And I said, this is what you're going to do. I said, until the end of the school year, I want 2 bags of Cool Ranch Doritos. This is the tax that he had to pay for me not kicking his ass, right? I said, I want an ice cream sandwich, vanilla, right? Ice cream sandwich, a Snickers bar, and a Sprite sitting right there on my table every day. And if it's not, I'm going to kick your ass. Now, mind you, this is the bigotry that was programmed in me. And that white boy, for all intents and purposes and for the most of the duration of that school year, he made sure. Now, mind you, he sat with other white people. I sat with the black group, but he made sure he came over and he put my lunch there every single day. Now, watch this. It's only a few days that he missed. You know, coming off of Christmas break and so on and so forth, right? And I remember I got ready to come to, to eat or whatever. So I was keeping my lunch money, right? Parents to give me lunch money. I'll spend that on snacks after school, right? Stop at the local corner store. So I'm coming to lunch, and my stuff wasn't there. I stood up, and so my friends said, no, man, no, y'all just why don't you just go, just going over there by your own, man. Is that the agreement that I made with him? Well, I'm just saying, bro, you stay out of it. See, they didn't know that it was something bigger that I was trying to fulfill, being like a little Mohammed, having this man paying tax, right? So I say, I stood up and he was, he sat with those whites way across. And so I said, hey, Ron. He looked around, he saw me. I said, get over here. The man came over there. I said, the hell is my lunch at? I said, you want me to knock your ass out? That's what I told him, just like that. You know what I mean? God is my witness. I said, you want me to knock your ass out? Now, mind you, here I'm thinking, he owes me that. The religious bigotry. You see? The man don't owe me nothing. He already had apologized when he said, hey, what's up, my nigga? He thought that they had already told me that he was one of the cool white people. So when he says my nigga, it's not like my nigger. Even though I believe you shouldn't use that word at all. I believe you shouldn't use it at all. I believe it's harmful. In any way, it shouldn't be applied to whites. It shouldn't be applied to blacks. It shouldn't be applied to Hispanics. It shouldn't be in music. It shouldn't be on used in movies. Or no. Outlaw that word in any words that denigrate any ethnic group or any group of color. This is just what I believe. And God had to show me the light of this and how this bigotry continues from generation to generation. So, So when he came over, I talked to my friends and all this other stuff. So let's see, you want me to knock your ass out? So then he went over there and he bought my stuff and brought it to my table. And I sat down and I ate lunch. He may have done that I would say all in all, maybe missed like maybe 3 times. But all intents and purposes, he made sure he had my lunch. And this is what I did. We got to like Wednesday of the end of the school year, right? And we had like 2 days left, and we was going to be out of school for that, that Friday for the rest of the year. Coming down the hallway, and I knew that at the beginning of that week, I said, yeah, I'm gonna have to lay this cracker out. This is what I was believing back then. It's not how I feel right now or what I believe or teach right now. But I'm only using this language with you to let you understand the religious bigotry. And mind you, is a religious term. And it's only depicting people that are wicked, not a whole race group and that kind of stuff like that, and mixing all that ideology and branding together and that kind of stuff like this, and the wrongness of this and how it continues on, whatever, you know what I mean? So I said, I got to punish this devil. Now, mind you, what wickedness did Ron do? He didn't do nothing wicked. He used a racial epithet but he used it in a. There's 2 ways you could use Nigga or Nigger. He used it in the correct pronunciation of that. He said my nigga. He didn't say my nigger with an ER. So I wanted to punish him, acting as though he used the ER, but then he used it the same way NWA was using it. You see? Because, that was popular back then. Cube and NWA back then, that was popular back then. So what else is he going to use it like? He's been hearing this music and hearing them, and on their records or whatever. The man used it the same way. So I wanted to punish him, though. Why? I don't know. But we get to that Wednesday, and I say, you know what? I think on Friday we're going to have a half a day, and I think on a Thursday was something happened, assembly or something like that, so I wouldn't get to see him. But the next time we walking down the hallway before lunch, and me and Ron would cross paths, and any time that he would see me, it's like something in him knew that one day I was going to get him. And so as we coming down to the end of the school year, and he get ready to cross, we getting ready to walk down this hallway where we passed each other. We didn't see each other at any other time during the day. It always was walking down this hallway, and it was like 2 classes before lunch. But that let Ron know that 2 classes after this, I have to pay my tax. I got to make sure I had this man's stuff at the table. And so, as we coming down the hallway, right? End of May, end of the school year. And I said, today is the day. Now, what's weird, I remember Tuesday, the day before, I assaulted him, that he looked at me in a certain way, like he knew something was going to happen. Now, mind you, I didn't tell my friends because I knew they had some blabbermouths, and they would probably tell him don't come to school for that whole week. But it's like he knew something. He'd come down the hall. Hey, what's up, Josh? Hey, what's up? Now I just look over, cut my eyes at him a little bit as I'm still talking to my friends. But then, mind you, I had something on my mind at that time. I said, man, one day I got to get this guy, man. And so that Wednesday came. We coming down the hallway. And so as we come, and I made sure purposely that I'm talking to the friends, laughing and that kind of stuff like that. But I'm on the edge, of the crowd. So you got people coming one way and we going the other way. And so I remember I knew what Ron typically would be at. So I was on the outside of my friends. So as they was walking towards me, I would just reach over and I would be able to connect them. And so as they we laughing and stuff like that, getting ready to cross each other. And as he says, hey, what's up, like that, right? Man, I reached over, wow! I buffed him in his jaw, right? And he fell on the ground. And I told you I used to wear steel-toe boots. And I began to commit to kicking him, all up in the gut and stuff like that, and stomping him because I used to wear these steel-toe boots. And I was saying to him, I was like, don't you ever use the N-word and all the other type of stuff like that, right? Putting them on it real good, right? The man never hit me. He just never hit me, right? And so my friends, they pulled me off. I mean, man, it happened so fast, man. I mean, I had punched him. He's down on the ground. I must have got in a good 2-3 kicks before I started stomping him and stuff like that. And come to find out, right? Well, I left him there, went to class, sat down, and like 10 minutes later, then the police came and they handcuffed me, and then they took me away. And then and I remember being in that city. Probably when if somebody do a documentary on me, they'd be able to ask the Kenosha police, let's have some mug shots of this guy, right? You know what I mean? And they took a couple pictures of me, and I used to design clothes. So on my clothes, I would have the gang symbolism, and I was bold, like in opposite gangs, but like they wouldn't mess with me, and so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like the leader of the gang in the area. And so very influential, and that it was a particular gang in that that they didn't know in that particular area, but that school year after we was done, that gang was there. That gang was there. You know what I mean? I planted foundations there, man. You know what I'm saying? As well as I planted, the Nation of Islam's teachings there, growing up. So much so I remember that it was a friend of mine. I had saw him on social media, and I don't know if he remembered me or anything like that, but I remember it was a friend of mine that I used to, teach and stuff like that, and come to find out that he's in in that pro-black teaching. And I thought it, years ago, like maybe a good 6 years ago, and I said, look at him. I said, like it's all just from seeds that I planted on that man. I hope that, he spawned into, something greater, or that he wind up stumbling upon my blog talks or YouTube videos or that have my teachings on there. He could see that I evolved, and and if he wants to become a disciple, or so I can teach him so that he could go out into the world and teach people the correct way. That would just warm my heart right there. You know what I mean? Just to know that this guy was with me, when I was young and doing things. That'd be spectacular. And it would just show our growth and so on and so forth. So anyway, got suspended and I only had 2 days left, right? And got kicked out of that school district, and we were forced to move back to Chicago. And so I had to go back to Muhammad University of Islam. And they graduated me, and I became, Minister Farrakhan's youngest, not only student minister, but also youngest security personnel. I was the camera operator for him, too. And so I did that as I'm doing security at the same time, looking for snipers, all kinds of stuff like that, you know what I mean? And you would see me. It was in 1995 when he went to Phoenix, Arizona, and this was during the pre-Million Man March speeches and stuff like that, and so I'm giving you more of a time period, so you can go and you can look it up for yourself. But on the cover of after the day after the speech, it was on a Sunday. I graced the cover of the I think it's the newspaper was the Arizona Republic, I think so, and I was on the cover, and it says, security guard of Louis Farrakhan, and I let this lady take a picture of me. Oh my goodness, I got in a world of trouble. Man, you don't let nobody be taking no pictures of you, and so on and so forth. But yeah, the lady took a picture of me, and I was on the cover of the newspaper, right? Oh my God, I got in so much trouble for that one. You know what I mean? And I didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't know, and that was a no at the time. You know what I mean? But yeah, I had to come out of that religious bigotry, and I always wanted to reach back out to Ron, if Ron ever hear this, I like to shake that man's hand and tell him that I sincerely apologize, because it was that racist bigotry that I had that was incorporated in religion. And see, when you incorporate it in religion, it makes it's like adding baking soda or self-rising flour, you know what I mean, to a cake, and making that rise. It's that gives it rise. And really, that bigotry in the climate from the 1930s all the way down to the time of Malcolm X, all the way down to 1975, at the death of Mr. Muhammad, that is what made that organization rise. He had a very particular way Mr. Muhammad had a very particular way of teaching, that it was to program the Negro, not only to correct himself, but he had to see what whites had done. And what they had done was wicked. But there was something that maybe he left out, or maybe he just did not know. Whites would have never begun to do what they did. And the Arabs, you can't let the Arab off the hook. If you don't let the whites off the hook, then you can't let the Arab off the hook, because according to Arab history, the white Arabs held Africa in the trans-African slave trade, right? Or you would say the Arab-African slave trade. That lasted 1,000 years before the little 310 years of the transatlantic slave trade. So if you're going to beat up on the European white Americans, then why aren't we beating up on the religious bigotry that Arabs had against Africans? And then what's really interesting is that as you go around the world and you see, these mind you, religious bigotry. What if I told you I found out something this year? watching some videos of some Muslims that used to live in Saudi Arabia, and now they're Christians, and they become apologetics. And they were talking about the mosques that is in Africa, even though they might be somewhat pointed east or whatever. All the Muslim mosques in the east, they are built, especially after the Islamic beginnings up in Petra of Jordan, right, in that area, and coming out of the Nabateans and those early Christians that was converted to Muslims and so on and so forth. You got to know that early history. And before they moved that, and because there was Kaabas before, you had the Kaaba in Mecca. So don't let them tell you that falsity that it was the area of Adam and Eve and Abraham. All that is fictional. That's illusion. It never happened. It just never did. There's nothing there but desert. They're building that up nowadays, but when you go back, no, that was very, very desert land. There was no water there. How can you have civilization with no water? There's no water. You know what I'm saying? So no, that wasn't the Garden of Eden. That wasn't paradise or anything like that. No. But anyway, but those mosques that's in the east that are ran by white Muslims, right, or you would say Arab Muslims, they are directly. You could draw a line literally on the map, and they are pointing directly at the Kaaba in Mecca. Why is it that the mosques, centuries old, right, that is in Africa, they are pointing east, but not directly pinpointed at Mecca? Why the Arabs don't even want that directly pointed, that energy directly, so they don't want the African to really be connected to Allah? Just think about that. Why is Islam that Iblis, the devil, Shaitan, why is he depicted as black? It's religious bigotry. That's why they ran through the African continent and did so much conquering there. Slavery. There's always have been slaves in the world, before the Arab-African slave trade. But what the Arabs did was very unique and very particular. People was more than just indentured servants. They were chattel. Little Arab boys in Saudi Arabia will use black Africans like pets. They had to carry their books and so on and so forth on top of their heads and stuff like that. And then they are chained to a post. And when the Arab boy comes out of school, his little African little boy, his little servant boy, will grab his books, put them on top of his head, and the Arab would unchain him. And then they would walk home. And so all the Arab boys would have their little black African slave boys carrying their books and doing all kinds of things for them and stuff like that. So why the Arabs was getting education, the Africans ain't getting nothing. They have to sit there in obedience and wait for the Arab boys to come out of school. You're telling me that that's a religion of peace? You're telling me that bigotry is of God? I want you to think for a second. Joy's religion. color should have nothing to do with it. Everybody should have the same chance, even if they've been wicked. Give them the chance to repent and to turn over their life to God. Then teach them how to do it and how to live a life serving God to one another. I'm going to say this, and we're going to get into, I'm going to do part 2 tomorrow. So I want to leave you with these 2 scriptures. After everything Solomon got done with, when you go into the Proverbs and to the book of Ecclesiastes, he tells you it was all vanity. It was all vanity. All the women he had, all the riches and everything, he says all vanity. But he says in Ecclesiastes 12:13, he said, hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. And I remember in the book of Micah, it says, oh man, what is it that the Lord requires? Do good, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. You got to put God first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto us. We can't get around that. We want, with our religious leaders, we want world power. See, I saw all those lessons. I said, no, I can't do it that way. Even though I was given entree, very special privileges that I just have never read anybody. I look back and I said, damn, I had kind of entree that I've never heard anybody else having. Very special, very unique, because I have a very unique way that God is using me to approach the world and to gather his people and to make sure that people know that with me, it's not about money. It's not about power. Why? Because unless the Lord build the house is built in vain. Do you know how many religious leaders and their teachings and their whole organization goes up in smoke? You only really know it at the end. It's because of that bigotry. And I remember reading something when Imam Warthuddin Muhammad, after he succeeded Elijah Muhammad, even though Elijah Muhammad didn't want a successor. Yeah, in his teachings, then he don't have a successor. But his son succeeded him. There was, at the same Muhammad University that I went to, but this was in 70s, between 75 and 677. And it's a news article that was in Chicago Tribune. I made sure that I downloaded it. Now, mind you, I was very young, like 2-3 years old. So as Imam Warthuddin Muhammad was trying to integrate the Nation of Islam and get them out of the bigotry, the religious bigotry, denigrating others because of color, because white Christians had denigrated black Americans based on color. I mean, we understand why it was done. But he says in the article, in the newspaper, there was a white teacher. Well, there's a white lady. What W.D. Muhammad did was open up the Nation of Islam to accept membership from people all over the world. All races, all nationalities, they can now join. But with Mr. Muhammad, it was only for black people. So there was a teacher. As I said, you can find this news article in the Chicago Tribune if you just go and search for it. There was a teacher that she was white, and she had became a Muslim. You would see her with her hair scarf on, and I mean, just for all intents and purposes, just a regular Muslim. So she wanted to teach at Muhammad University. And she got so much backlash because she was white. Those black students, those black teachers, those members of the Nation of Islam, after Mr. Muhammad's death, gave that lady hell. I don't know if she ever filed a lawsuit against them or not, but they made it very difficult for that teacher to be a teacher at that school. But that's what happens when we languish in that bigotry. It's not good. It's not good, beloved. And I had to learn that that wasn't good.